And here we are with One is the Loneliest Number. Ladies, welcome. And if you could introduce yourself briefly and let everybody know what you had to do with this film project.
Augie, you go.
Okay. I'm Augie Duke, and I'm the director of One is the Loneliest Number.
My name is Freddie Duke. I'm her mom. And I wrote the story and produced it, and it's based on a real story of my life.
Yeah, I read that in the cover letter that you had originally submitted to our festival, and it made I like to read those after I see the film because I just like to go into things cold, and it really it I could totally feel it. I could see it because there's something about this 5-minute short that just feels deeply personal. And Augie, I really wanted to commend you on your directing because I just think this is absolutely fantastic. I felt as though we were watching an entire feature film on this one young woman, and it was just condensed into 5 minutes. The color palette you have, flashing to is 8 millimeter when she's like even
Yeah,
younger.
yeah,
I
Christina.
You
really,
notice that? That's so good. You
I
have an eye.
really thought that was fantastic. And then you have this pyro friend. So it's just, the light and the dark of these two characters. So Augie, if I may, what made you want to take this story in that direction
Oh, this is
and
all
give
my
it the tone? Oh,
I'm gonna give this to my mother. I mean, she pushed me because I've been acting for around 15 years and I sort of secretly wanted to direct. I'm like, I think one day I'll direct. And she's an amazing writer. And she wrote this incredible short story. And she said, I think you should direct this one. So I commend my mom. This is all my mother for this one for sure. And so she pushed me and inspired me to do this. And I did it. It was crazy. I was like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm
But
doing.
she did hire incredible cinematographers and
I
people who kind of recreated the 70s vibe.
that yeah, absolutely. Well done with that. I mean,
appreciate
capturing a period so authentically is such a challenge, particularly when you might have a more limited budget for a project. And
yes.
I just thought I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. Where did they do this? How did they do it? The bathroom and the tiling, the costumes. I noticed at the end were all from it was authentic from a vintage store. So yes,
Oh,
if you
no,
would go
it
ahead.
was from my wardrobe that I wore to high school, that the story's really based on me really doing those things,
Yeah.
wearing the matador and all the little hippie clothes. They're actually my authentic clothes, but she did go to vintage stores too.
Yeah. We
I
got
love that.
yeah, I'm very inspired by the 60s and 70s, and my mom luckily has all the wardrobe still and I still wear it. So we got lucky with that. And I have an incredible DP named Kevin James Barry, who's just a fantastic DP. And then
Yeah,
I
shout out to him.
thank you. And I really wanted to incorporate the 8 millimeter. My friend, I'm very lucky because of acting. I know all these awesome DPs, and my friend has an 8 millimeter camera and a 35 millimeter camera. So we incorporated that because I thought that was going to be super important with the vibe of an era
And,
then.
and Billy Vera's house.
Yes. So my mom and we really got lucky because I was like, wait a second, we can really do this with the hookups of friends, and our friend Billy Vera has an amazing house. It looks like it's from the 1960s, so that helped.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And then, of course, the song that you chose for this piece is a character in itself. I felt as well. Um, what made you want to choose that song and that version of it? Go ahead. Yes, yes.
Well, I
I'll give
mean,
that to my mother.
when I wrote the story, when I wrote the short story, I would write like a paragraph of the story, and then I would include a lyric, a line from One is the Loneliest Number. And she got her friend who directed her in a terrific, terrific film called Trauma is a Time Machine, Angelica Zolo. Do you know her? She's a director.
She's an incredible filmmaker. Yeah, she's amazing, and she got
Has a beautiful voice, and she's a friend of ours, and she did the musical arrangement and everything. But it is a Harry Nilsson song. I mean, it is.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that is she does have a fantastic voice. I loved the color to her voice as well. Your movie is very colorful to me, so that's why all those imageries
thank
are
you.
coming up.
Yeah, it's
um,
haunting and soulful. I was like, her
yeah,
voice.
yeah, it was perfect for this
Oh,
and telling this story. Well, ladies, I just have to thank you so much again. It was wonderful to watch, and I know the audiences loved it. And we're so grateful to have it within our festival. Uh, briefly, if there's a place we can find more of your work or maybe something coming up. Augie, you first.
Well, I'm mainly acting, but I'm starting to direct, and I just did a music video that's going to come out soon. So I'm excited to share everybody. Their band's called Egg Drop Soup. It's a punk band, all women. So
Nice.
hopefully I'll get to show you guys that soon. My mom just keeps on writing badass films and producing documentaries. You take it away, Mom.
Well, the next one is, I'll submit it.
Please do. Please do.
Just finishing, the last finishing touches. It's a mockumentary, and it's full feature, and the two titles of movies that I've done have kind of raunchy titles, but one is a documentary about my dad, and it's called Fuck 'em, because it's his
Awesome.
because it's his philosophy, which is not to care what anyone thinks. He had polio. He produced a lot of movies. And the other one is 6 Degrees of Pussy, which was really about cats.
My family, Christina. Welcome to the family.
Hey, I think it's fantastic. This is art. It's about life. It's about real people. I mean, that's the best art, right? So, well, ladies, thank you so much again. And thank you for One is the Loneliest
We're so
Number.
honored to be in your festival, by the way.
Yeah, we love your film festival. Thank you so much, Christina. I super appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll be seeing you in person sooner than we know it. We just will. I know it's going to happen.
I hope so. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Welcome to the Chain Film Festival, here with the movie Sync. We're here with Mark Johnson, the writer of the movie, and Michael, who directed it. Can you tell us a little bit about the process? I know Michael was just telling me how he was working on this project.
Sure. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mark and I had worked before on another film, and we hadn't done it for a few years. We both teach at the same high school in Houston. And so we wanted to do something. We knew that we wanted to do a project that it was kind of based on our experience with students and what we knew from them. And so that was the impetus. That was the original idea for the story. And then Mark, as with our other project, wrote it. And then we got together, as he said, he produced it, which means, paid for a lot of the sets and spent a lot of money. And he also, I would say, since it was a largely, I call it like, yes, I directed it, but I also call it a Mark Johnson film because it was really his vision. It was really what he wanted there. And so, I'd like to take some more credit for that. But I think there was. Go ahead, Mark.
To give a little more color to the project, so we're both high school teachers, and our school, fortunately, has a really fantastic AV program led by Michael Shea. And so we love making movies, and we found ourselves in the situation where we had a small group of students that we just thought were awesome, very talented, great to work with, super hardworking. And we just decided together, while we have these kids, let's have a project. Let's do a project with them. So we did kind of an off the books special project. It was very collaborative. We basically told them, you work super hard on this. Don't let us down. And we will in turn put a little bit of money into this, which is not normally what happens at a high school on the high school level. And we'll try to get it into a film festival, and we succeeded. So we're super happy about it. We're super proud of the students. They really killed themselves working on this. So within the context of normal high school life. So it's unusual, I think, for high school teachers and students to be able to do something as ambitious as we felt this was.
Yeah, it really is ambitious too, and the performances are ambitious too. To even just the logistics of learning all those different some of the languages that are spoken throughout the course of it, and the fact that it's done so well. And Mark, it's a brilliant idea too. Like really unique idea. I mean, it's in the realm of kind of Hunger Games or something like that, for lack of a better analogy, but it's an original concept. I guess being in the educational system inspired you to wonder what's going on, huh, in the world.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, we made this movie about sort of a virtual education before the pandemic. I don't know, life imitated art somehow. And I don't know if that was just like in the ether, and and it was informed by our own experiences as high school teachers. You hear like them talking about like scope and sequence, like that's a Texas education term. Like all education is sort of broken down into these discrete, I personally think it's all garbage. I hope the Texas
Oh,
Education
absolutely.
Administration never sees this, but
They'll have to pay to see it, so
yeah,
they're
exactly.
not going to.
Yeah.
But that sort of, but what I think at the heart of it, what compelled me when writing, is this idea of real learning happens when the kids are fascinated, when the kids drive their own learning. And so in the context of the movie, they're left alone by the powers that be to learn whatever they want, however they learn it. And then the story kind of unfolds and the wheels kind of start coming off. But yeah, so yeah, we had different languages. We have an original K-pop song, which a
That
friend
was
of a
fun.
friend, that was fun. A friend of a friend in New York City, I think a doctor or somebody who's Korean, actually wrote the lyrics and sang them. And our composer put them to music, his imitation of a K-pop song. So we tried to pack in a lot of stuff for a high school production. The kids
Yeah.
choreographed it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had somebody else direct that sequence, which was good because the other part was killing me. We were trying to do this all within 2 shooting days. And
Oh,
so
wow.
we took a break. I mean, long done days, but we took a break, and then they got to dress up and go and do that. And that was a lot of fun. And I remember Mark and I kind of, let the other director for that part, show us what he had. And when we first see it, it's like anything. We were sort of going, okay, that was really weird, but yeah, kind of really kitschy, and the green screen's not done that well, but we were like, but that might be part an aesthetic that we can live with. Anyway, we ended up liking it, but yeah, I would say that's a kind of a strange part of the film.
Yeah, I think
and
it's part of it seems to me, I mean, just watching it, it seemed to me like that was totally a choice because all the other effects are very spot on throughout, and K-pop, like K-pop on a green screen is like didn't seem that out of this world. I didn't know that it had a different director for that section. That's excellent. So it sounds like a
Yeah.
really collaborative effort. That's exciting.
yeah, and if I can just emphasize again, just to, because I think I hope some of the students a few of them have graduated now and gone on to college. But if they do see this, I just want to emphasize again how awesome they were in producing this with us, in making this movie, because we shot it on 2 Saturdays, which is a lot of filmmaking in 2 days. The building, we did this in our black box, in the building. It opened up at 5 a.m, and we had to be out by 5 p.m. because the custodian was closing the building. So it wasn't, it was a lot of stress. And we really we did not stop. Like there were no breaks, 2 12-hour shoots, which is a lot for anybody, let alone, high school students.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the things, because we hadn't done, a ton of special effects. I mean, that's just not kind of the films that I've done. And so the egg drop scene where it just stops, where she stops it in midair and it's that virtual reality kind of thing. That was very tricky. I was using all kinds of shutter speeds and, trying to get that to actually happen. And no matter what you do, when an egg drops, the gravity, it just didn't look right. And then finally we came up with this contraption, where we had the empty eggs dropping from strings behind with a green screen behind it, all for just a fraction of a second of filming. But that was one of the things that I liked, that I learned something on that.
Yeah, we learned a lot. We both learned a lot as filmmakers from this. It was an incredible experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can tell, and the proof is there. And it sounds like having all these different collaborators, and that's a short period of time to do so much too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't ever want to do that again. I've told my
No.
like the
Sounds
next
like you
time
need
we do a
at
movie
least a third
together,
Saturday.
it's gonna be like summer break. We're gonna take 2-3 weeks like everybody else does, and work around people's schedules. I don't advise it, but it worked out. But yeah, we couldn't like
Yeah.
hold the kids there. They had to like, their parents were picking them up. So
Yeah.
Well, you really gave your students a wonderful opportunity, and the outcome of that is all here. It's just it's a really great film, and
Thank you.
thank you.
great way to handle sci-fi, because sci-fi usually, dealing with the past or the future, in a realistic way to make an analogy for what's happening in the world. I thought it was really effective.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I wanted it to be near future enough for that. I mean, obviously I had a lot to get off my chest when I wrote this movie, about education, about our political situation, Texas experiences, the experiences of our students of color, so I tried to pack a lot in there, and that was part of. I mean, we kind of set ourselves a high bar. I never knew. I always hoped it would be successful to like, to ask a lot of the viewer, because I think it's a very. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me. Like, were you able to
Yeah,
follow the story?
yeah, of
Like,
course, yeah, and it's the way it unfolds is wonderful.
yeah.
That
Oh, thank
you
you.
kind of go in blind, and you figure out as you go along. Okay, this is what's happening here. Like you can pick up like that they're in this, like they're a study group kind of situation, and then
Mhm.
it opens up to be like, no, maybe there's something like insidious happening here, like there's something's changed, and
Mhm.
then we start realizing that like amendments are changing and things like that. Yeah, it's totally clear, and the performances are wonderful.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
great. I
Yeah.
mean,
Thanks.
But I really I applaud your efforts. I look forward to seeing more of your work, and keep inspiring those young people, because they're going to go out and do
Mhm.
great things in the world. That's really important. You can change people's lives.
I
Oh,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
I mean, yeah.
So I'm so happy to celebrate Sync, and support those students out there, and for all you filmmakers out there, help out some kids, and support some students,
Yeah,
because these two
yeah,
certainly did, and look what happens.
yeah. I think it would be great if people did more sort of multi-generational collaborative projects instead of just students. You just do it by yourselves. College, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes the delineations of, you have to, before you can move up to the next level, you have to prove yourself. you know um I think we tried to give our students and ourselves, just as importantly, ourselves, as like professional and as challenging and as ambitious of a project as we could, and I think we all benefited from that. So i think I think more people could do that.
I
Yeah, and
agree 100%.
the students got to see the whole process. I teach a film class, and so one of the things that I studied, and I let them in on that. There was, and it was fun to do, was like, what are the logistics of filming this sort of round, circle of students in a black box area. And so some of the things that I studied and went over with some of them was 12 Angry Men, which takes place all inside that jury conference room, and it's a different setup. But how do where do you go with these over the shoulders, and there's that 360-degree angle, that you're always taught to obey, and so it kept me on my toes in terms of just the logistics of when these people are all sitting around, where does the camera go? And what I learned about it a lot, and through my study of it, was too, a lot of that depended on the look or the eyes glancing off to this direction, and then you have the camera there. And there was I shot a lot, and there were some that some of that footage that is like, okay, I'm disoriented from this move. And so I was able to cut to a wider scene or a different angle. I know Mark was a little, going, let's move on with this scene. I'm like, I need another coverage shot here. So,
The building was closing at 5.
Well,
But,
working under fire, that's what true independent filmmakers do. I really appreciate your work, and I hope everyone can support your work in the future. And I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Kirk.
Thank you.
Hello, and I am with Rainy Day Crow, who is the writer-producer of Quiet on Set with Crone Productions. Rainy, thank you so much for joining the Chain NYC Film Festival and for submitting your film this year. We obviously very much enjoyed it. Your film has a lot of things going on in it, I would say many difficult situations, to put it lightly. And the first question I wanted to ask you was the decision for you guys to have a female director within the film driving a lot of this in terms of with the lead actress and what happens to her in this really intimate sex scene. And then within that bathroom, the director being the one kind of, it's really okay. I don't think he meant it. Because typically I feel in stories such as these, you'd see a male actor, the filmmaker would choose a male. And so I was curious why you wanted to do a female director for this story.
Right. So this was started as my response to Me Too movement and everything was happening. And I knew I kind of wanted to process or respond to that in some way. And this is the story that kind of came out of it. During this time, also, there were a lot of, in both the theater community and the film community, over the last several years, there's been a movement towards intimacy coordinators. And a lot of stories have come out about exploitation of people on set or on screen. Especially, women. And there's a lot of stories. There've been a lot of stories. There are certain ones that especially influence the writing of this. But then also, and one of the ones is Last Tango in Paris. I don't know if you've heard the stories about Last Tango in Paris, which is a famous movie. It's a great movie. But what happened on set between the director and the actress and the actor, it's just not, it's still like, it is so cringeworthy, the story of it. And there were other stories. So then as I was kind of writing it, I mean, we kind of knew right away that we wanted to be a woman director, because another thing that was coming out of this was post the 2016 election, sort of thinking about how women fail women, right? And in a lot of ways, how many women that didn't stick up for women in the election or haven't in the debates that have followed, in Harvey Weinstein and a lot of the cases that came out of Me Too, how many women were complicit, how many were judged or judgmental of different things that happened. Mm-hmm. Personally, in trying to process all of this, I've thought a lot about my own, obviously I'm a supporter of women. I believe women, I listen to women, but also like men need a path to redemption. There are some, there are a lot of like really messy stories where yes, somebody was violated, but also the person maybe who didn't know or wasn't smart, right, or came from a generation or, and it's really messy and confusing. And I'm in a college environment and I see these young men who have been exposed to media all their life where there aren't very many women protagonists. It's all men. Women are so objectified. They're in an abstinence only state about learning about sex education. So like, how do you teach them about consent? Like, how do you even do that?
Well, I thought it was a really, go ahead. I thought it was a really strong choice to do that. And I appreciated that. And I like that you brought up the point of complicity and women not always supporting women or seeing something, and saying something. So I thought that was a really strong point in the film, and I wanted to thank you for that. I thought it was a good way to
Yeah,
tell it.
well, I didn't want it to, we didn't want it to be another, like, it would be so easy to just make a lechy guy that was not understanding. But there's something about filmmaking in particular, and we have made other films where there are intimate scenes, so, we question our own, have we done the best that we can in creating a safe environment for our actors, and not, because once you're on set and you're trying to get the shot, there's something about the tyranny of the shot.
Mhm.
And, when I was writing this too, or rewriting it, the Christine Blasey Ford testimony was happening, and the entire country was watching this testimony, and still not everybody saw the same thing. So this was like a way to have an event, to really address like consent, right? We have an actress who's agreed to be in a scene, who's signed, who's done all these things. It's being witnessed, it's being recorded, and yet still something happens that is
Right.
beyond her consent, that
Mhm.
everybody watches, but nobody sees. And still, so it's questioned who to believe her. And there's no, when she, tries to report it or tries to stick up for herself, the chances that people are going to believe her, the chances that people are going to support her, and it's only going to tank the film that could be successful for her. So like, how to make it as complicated and painful for this person. And then not only that, but to make the film, like, she has to finish the film. And then that end
With that
scene that
guy.
she has to choose is so, like, I wrote, like, I think it's like the cheesiest, most misogynist, like stereotypical, like, film scene I could
I
like
can't live
think
without
of.
you. I won't be a
Yeah,
person for my soul.
absolutely.
I can't live without you. You
We see it
gentleman.
all the time, and we imagined like the female director is like one of the, like, we had it in her head, we had to imagine the whole film and what it really was, and who the director was, and we sort of had her imagine as like, she was so feminist that she couldn't be anti-feminist, like none of her actions, because she was a woman making a film.
Yeah.
So in her head she was able to, and also, as an independent filmmaker, you just don't have money, so the stakes are high, and you still have
That's
to rely
right.
on actors.
You got to get those shots in. Time is
Gotta
tight.
get
It
the
takes so long to
shots.
set everything up. I thought that was a really, really great angle to take in, because not everybody, viewers aren't always, people who aren't in filmmaking aren't always aware of that. So it's like, well, how does something like this happen on set? And it's like, well, the stakes are so high, and you have no idea how long they may have been taking to set up that shot. So at this point, it just needs to happen and get done, and it's in, and no one wants to reshoot it, because of money and time.
And
So
it's good, and that's the thing. So it's also the complicitness of the viewer, and that's why, when everybody's watching it, and it's like, it's become like it's on the top 10 list of indie sex scenes or whatever, because and the reason is because something happens in that sex scene, because there's also this artifice about sex on screen, and what's actually exciting about it is that something happens, right? Like when her eyes go, there's something real happening there. And that's what makes it good film. While at the same time, that's what actually makes it exploitative of the person involved.
well,
So,
I'm
I'm trying to pack a lot in 8 minutes.
That's you did. You packed a lot in. We have a lot here, and I really appreciate you and your team delving into what it means to have consent. What exactly does that mean? And I certainly hope that stories like yours help to have these things stop altogether, and to also encourage creators who do have these moments that are happening within their stories to really go about it in a very mindful and careful way, and choreographing everything and making sure that you have two people who trust each other throughout the room, and who aren't going to try to pull anything. I think that's all really important. And I think the more stories that we have get out like this will just continue to help it, so other women don't have to go through what is an unwinnable and unfair, terrible situation. So I want to thank you so much for that and for your work. Real quick, do you have any other projects that might be coming up?
Well, it's been a pandemic, so it's kind of altered the way we work. We were, Jeanette and I, and we've had a couple of films with Chain before. We had Heather Has Four Moms and Texting.
Yes, that's right, which are wonderful if anyone hasn't seen those yet.
So we've kind of been working on this Mom's Weekend, which is kind of a feature comedy, revenge, horror film about moms on a college campus that take revenge on a fraternity. And that was sort of inspired while we were working on set in a college town. And then individually, I have been working on a series of sort of pandemic portraits, like monologues and short scenes that you can do remotely, that are kind of, I'm accumulating and trying to figure out where they're going and what's going to happen with them after the fact.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I would like to thank you again. Thank you for your film, Quiet on Set. Welcome, Bob and Laura. I am here with Bob Seeley and Laura. Bob was the director, writer, and also starred in The Keeper. Laura, who is a producer of this as well. Welcome, you guys. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thanks. Great to be here. Thank you.
So the first thing I want to talk to you about with your film, which I really enjoyed, was the setup of this story. Now, I know that this film was inspired by a dream of yours, Laura. All right. That's where the inception of all this came.
Right.
So, but then we have the setup, and it's like, okay, two people getting ready and things are happening. Someone obviously has lost someone, and then they go and it's like, oh, okay, all right, this is like a dating thing, and I've seen this before, but it's so subtle, and I have to commend you on it because I'm like, something feels off, and I don't know why. And it really, nothing should be off. I mean, look, she's meeting this nice man, and it seems like they're connecting, but something just doesn't feel right. And so I wanted to ask you how you accomplished that, because I thought it is such a strong point in your short film.
Well, usually when people talk to me, they don't feel right. So that was a natural thing. No, it basically came about by, I wanted the subtlety there, and I wanted everyone to, and kudos to Betsy Atkins Johnson, who plays Celeste. I wanted
Wonderful.
someone that, people were going to fall in love with. I wanted people to be rooting for these two people to find each other. But then again, you get into the whole idea of how much are you willing to overlook or not see because you're so desperate for human contact.
And I really love the
point.
fact that you picked up on something being off, because Bob was very particular in directing it, in planting things that if you were really watching, you might catch them, and subliminally they would make you think, wait a second, this is not quite right. There were very subtle hints along the way on this film, but it was underneath. So you're absolutely right. There's something off, but you don't really figure it out until later.
Yes,
It's just my personality.
That's just the way he is. I live with him, so I can attest to that.
Hey, listen, that is a niche, and that's many people have made fantastic careers in doing just what you're doing so just beautifully. It was so fun to watch.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask, at the end, and we see that shot, how did you do the prosthetic, the head bust? I thought it looked fantastic.
It was, we basically used a green screen.
Okay. All right.
So she was there. I mean, things as you probably know, when you're on set, you have one idea, and you then have to go to plans, C, D, E, F, J, whatever, to get it done.
Right.
and it didn't work out exactly as we planned, because we realized my initial, without trying to give the movie away, but my initial idea for that shot was a very long pullback shot, a long dolly shot backwards, very slow, to reveal what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized that it was very hard for someone to stay still that long. In terms of eye twitching and nerves in the cheek. And it was just, so, but we did it the way we did with green screen.
Yeah.
And we were just pleased, and our editor did a great job at, highlight, doing some light touches and putting shadows in to make it, look three-dimensional. So,
And our makeup person as well did a really great job making that look like, ooh, what is this?
So our viewers at this point have seen your film, and so I don't
Okay.
think we're at risk of doing
Oh,
any
we're not giving
spoilers
anything
here.
away. Great.
Not,
Okay,
no,
yeah.
not giving anything away.
Right.
So one of the other things I wanted to ask you about is, as the writer, director, star of this, and putting all this together, you kind of have two endings to this, right? And I was curious if when you were editing it, putting it together, did you ever go, oh, I kind of want to stop it here at the more horrific ending, and why? What made you want to kind of give us a break as an audience, be like, it's all right. It's all right.
Well,
It's not so terrible.
There actually was a third ending,
Really?
which we decided to take out.
Yeah.
Because
We had a few people see it and they said, don't need that third part.
right.
But absolutely, there was the temptation, and we had several people who read the script and said, well, you should stop it right there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think
Because
Bob,
you
in
could.
spite of the fact that he makes very dark films most of the time, he's a funny guy, so he liked that idea. And we also had this feeling that, just like a dream, which the film was based
Right.
on, you really go on a roller coaster ride. So you never quite get your footing with a film, and that felt appropriate because it was dreamlike. So to
and then
end it that way.
And then as well, leaving, that ambiguity at the end
Yeah.
with just that little look up, away from camera.
Yeah.
And since everybody's seen this, the idea was to actually see him in a bar giving someone a drink.
Mhm.
And the closing line was going to be,
After he'd put something in the
right. The
Right,
closing line was
right.
going to be, you're a keeper. So it just wasn't needed. I mean, we
Yeah.
put it in there. I
Yeah.
actually cut it together and we screened it, and it wasn't needed. The ambiguity at the end seemed a little bit better, so we kept it there.
Yeah, I have to say I really enjoyed the way that you guys end it, on the two endings. I'm always curious at the decision-making process of that, because so many, short films, that's kind of the whole thing, right? Is that
Right.
hook, that twist at the end that really
Right.
keeps us in the setup. And I thought you executed it just wonderfully and
thank
kept
you.
us on our toes. Great performances. I I also liked how the dominatrix woman was like the best judge of character.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, those conversations, the woman, the dominatrix, the two guys at the bar, the two Russian guys, those are actual conversations that I've overheard I used to be a bartender. So those are conversations I actually finally got to use in a film.
That's great. That's
Just writing them down
fantastic.
in this little writer's notebook. I can use this now.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your work, Bob. You're
Oh.
such a talent, both of you, and I really look forward to seeing more of your work in the future, in our festivals. So if you could just real quick, where else can we find more work and upcoming work of yours?
We have two projects now on Amazon. One is called Figs for Italo. The other one is Brooklyn in July. I think they're free. I think Brooklyn in July is up there for free. Figs for Italo is
Might cost $1.
with Prime is free. I think is free.
Yeah.
That's it for now. We're again with the pandemic, it's kind of put a hold on things. I have been working in terms of writing and getting some more ideas. I've just finished a feature script that I'm trying to get out there. And just keeping busy and biding our time until things get back to some bit of normalcy.
I can understand that completely. Well, thank you so much again. This is the short film of The Keeper, and Bob Seeley, writer, director, and star actor as well. Thank you so much, you two.
Thank you. And thank you guys for keeping the arts alive.
Thank you to the whole festival and to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, and here we are with Buy-In. I have the director, Bree Castellini, and starring Colin Hinckley. Welcome, you two, and thank you for coming to the festival and being part of this talkback.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us.
So, Bree, I'd like to begin with you as the director and learning a little bit more about the story behind this piece. This is a really fun, for me anyway, psychological thriller. And I wanted to know, we were in this small room, right? And it kind of had this like claustrophobic feeling to it. And I wanted to know if that was intentional, if that was, like how you found that space and your decision to film in such a way to make us feel like that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it actually was planned. It came down to the script. So Colin and I co-wrote the script together, and it was born out of both of us wanting to write something together because we'd worked on a couple of other projects, enjoyed it, and we were like, well, what if we do another one? And so we basically made a list of all of the things that we thought we could like accomplish and things that we thought were scary and things we had access to, people we wanted to work with. And from just like a lot of connecting things on that list, we kind of came together with the concept for buy-in. Colin knew about this hotel, and I will say we didn't think that the rooms were going to be that small. So if you felt claustrophobic, so did we.
Yeah.
And there was only one bathroom
Oh, no.
in the room with all of us. But yeah, it was definitely an intentional choice to like trap you as the characters were trapped, and make the sort of way that the camera looked up or down on people make the audience feel like who was in power at the moment. And so that was definitely a choice that we made. Something that we also didn't expect was there was the mirror right next to the door, which actually created a lot of really cool sort of like seeing people behind each other kind of
Yeah.
moments and seeing double. That was unintentional, and it certainly was a challenge to get the DP to be hidden behind the actors, but I think it created a really cool, like, everyone was constantly being watched, sometimes by themselves, sometimes by each other, even if they were across the room. So the room was not 100% planned, but I think it worked out exactly as we emotionally hoped it to, even if logistically it wasn't necessarily what we had hoped for.
Well, I thought that was really clear, and I'm so glad you brought up the mirror because I wanted to comment on that because I was just like, "Oh, that's fun." There were moments I'm like, "Oh, look at that over there. Oh, you're
Yeah,
seeing a
you can
different
see
aspect
Colin
of
like
it." Yeah.
hauntingly in the background.
It was really fantastic. So Bree, what is it about this genre that you love so much that you like made you want to make this and play with this?
Honestly, it's that Colin loves this genre. So I'm actually
Oh,
not really a horror person
uh,
at all. The project we first worked on together was a zombie web series called Brains, but it was definitely more of a comedic romp than it was like a horror thing. But I knew Colin was a writer and he loved like the Stephen King and like slow, creepy builds and things like that. So like I'm actually gonna let Colin take this because I think Colin probably has a lot more thoughts on why this genre was the one that he picked and I tagged along for.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'd never gotten the chance to really do anything like this, any sort of horror or thriller project, and I really wanted to. And I'd auditioned for some in the past, but never got any. And I always felt like that would be a really fun project. And I also wanted to play a character that was sort of started out sort of ambiguous, but became more menacing as the story went along, and couldn't come across any, so figured might as well write one for myself. And Bree was super game from the beginning to just kind of do whatever. So we concocted this story together, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. Kind of a challenge writing for myself, but Bree was super helpful in that regard, and it was I think it turned out pretty well.
I think so too. And Bree, it's interesting that you say I liked how you brought up your past more of comedy experience and doing Brains together because I mean this might be my disturbed sense of humor, but I thought there were funny moments. There were times I was laughing.
Yeah.
Colin, your performance in particular, certain moments and reactions you had that I thought were just really layered and were funny to me. I saw how you were playing this mind game with this other guy who was coming in to really play mind game on you, and then of course how you start to shift those dynamics shift, of course. So I have to say I thought it was funny.
Yeah, those moments are probably me. Like Colin would send me like a recap of his script, and it would be like really dark and long, and I'd be like, I feel like someone should make a joke here. And sometimes Colin would have to be like, we can't cut the tension here. You have to calm down. I'm like, okay, but can there be a joke here? So that was kind of our writing process, is we came up with a structure together. And then Colin would take a pass in the script, and then I would take a pass in the script and make it dumber, and then he would take a pass in the script and like make it slightly smarter again, and we would kind of pass it back and forth until we had a pacing that we were happy with. But yeah, definitely the comedic moments were something I wanted, because like something that I'm always frustrated with, not just in like horror, but in dramatic storytelling, is that there's never a moment of levity in a place where I feel like an actual human person would try to find a moment of levity. Like when everything is terrible, I mean, we've been living through an 8-month global pandemic. Are you going to look me in the eyes and say you haven't laughed and like kind of gone hysterical for a second just because everything is so weird? Why could you not comment on it? So that's sort of the approach that I took to my first big dramatic project. And I was like, well, if I was in this situation and everything was going down like this, I feel like I would probably try to like regain some control and make a joke to maybe dispense with some of the tension. Even if it wasn't successful, I feel like that would be a totally natural human reaction. So I think that's where a lot of that came from.
I think it showed through and was successful. It was a nice balance that the two of you found together in creating that. And I thought just added another dynamic to the film. And it's this great theme of this, the human search of being unburdened. How do we unburden ourselves? We put so much on us, and then it's like the pie in the sky. What if I were free of all of that? And so I enjoyed your exploration of all of that. And Colin, man, your performance, I was just glued to you. You're absolutely fantastic. The other cast members as well, I'd like to give them a shout out because they were obviously a huge part of this, and gave you a lot to work with as well. But I so look forward to seeing even more of your work. Audience members out there, Bree and Colin are actually members of the Barrow Group Theater, who were also in the building where the Chain Theater resides, in Manhattan, where we're located. And so we had seen each other, and we always love when we can kind of come together as artists from different groups and share our work with each other and celebrate work with each other and get to know each other better. And so I just think that this is such a fantastic way that we can do that right now during the pandemic. So thank you both for submitting your film. It's very fun, and I look forward to seeing even more of your work. Bree, why don't we start with you? Where can we find more of your work? And then Colin.
Great. Yeah, BrieCastellini.com. You can find all of my work, including all of the other things that Colin has been in. I think Colin has been in every single thing that I've ever done in some way or another. So if you are a fan of Colin, you're a fan of mine. You have to be. That's the rule. You can also, if you want to just see what like the most up-to-date stuff I'm doing is, you can find me on Twitter at Bree's Own World. If you just Google me though, Twitter's the first thing that comes up. So you'll find me. Don't worry.
And Colin?
Yeah, you can just find me at colinhinkley.com. I spend most of my time on Twitter these days, and the handle there is just C Hinkley S, Chinkleys, all spelled out. Yeah, so if you want to get in touch with me, I'll be there literally 24/7.
Well, congratulations, you both. You clearly make a fantastic team and are creating good stuff.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I am here now with Alex Laird, who is the director, co-writer, and editor of Tabernacle. Welcome, Alex. It's so wonderful to have you here at the festival.
Hey, Christina. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of it, especially given all the COVID stuff. It's great that you guys are still putting it on and kind of committing to making it sort of special too, with like talkbacks and things like that. Because I know it's difficult with virtual festivals, but you've got to kind of bring that experience
Thank you.
that we're all used to as best you can, I suppose. You guys are doing it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. The talkbacks are always really important to us and one of our favorite parts. So it's been an interesting way to do this, but also has been feeling so good to connect with all the filmmakers. And it's been cool too, because we've been able to touch base and talk to filmmakers who maybe we wouldn't have, who live internationally, like yourself, based in Australia, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting. I've been to New York once in 2010, but surely it's changed since then.
I'm sure, maybe just a little bit.
Yeah.
So your film Tabernacle, I have to say, I think it's beautifully shot, fantastic story, wonderful cast. It's one of the things I really like about your storytelling, and I was wondering if maybe you could kind of key us in on your style, is you have these shots, these long shots that you give us, and sometimes the person who has the majority of the dialogue in the scene isn't even facing us. And I really enjoyed that perspective, and I thought it was just so right for this piece as well, in terms of, for me personally, of watching and bringing my own opinions and I guess perspectives on what was going on with the characters. So is that kind of like your signature style, you would say? Is there another director that you look to where you really like that kind of filming, and why?
I think so. Now, I don't necessarily say that it's my style, but it's certainly one that I adopted for this story. So in the conception, I was kind of trying to figure out how to tell a story about the housing crisis that, I mean, it's an issue everywhere, but in Tasmania specifically, it's a massive issue. We have a big tourism industry here at the moment, but before that, we didn't have that much. We're a small island below the bottom of Australia. And when everything started happening here and it got really popular, we were having a massive housing crisis, and it was something that we were not used to here before. Whereas in bigger areas, there's an apparent homelessness problem. It's just there. So I was kind of thinking, how do I tackle this? I'm not interested necessarily in like sentimental victim kind of narrative, but I am interested in like the idea of, I guess, victimhood. So I was kind of like, what if I told the story through the perpetrator's point of view and embodied his own kind of ironic victim narrative, like that he feels the kind of one that's put upon. And in doing that, I just locked the camera on him basically as much as I could in a kind of, hopefully, kind of objective way where we keep things very cold. We're not hearing his side of the story at all. We're just watching him. Like, you set up the kind of given circumstances, I suppose, with the crash and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe that allows me to be a little bit slower after that and to be a little bit more ambiguous, because I mean, we know sort of what he's thinking and what he's grappling with. And obviously I think there's a history of filmmakers that play around with that style. You've got like Michael Haneke, Robert Bresson as well in the 50s and 60s, where they were all about these like really wide static shots, and they're not really going to tell you what to think. And I'm not sure if I did it in this film, but certainly with Haneke, he'll set up two kind of like moral dilemmas, and he won't necessarily tell you which way to think. He'll just present it, and you kind of have to go away and do the work yourself. And that sounds like a cop-out. It can sound like a cop-out, but I don't think it is. I think it can be pretty thought-provoking, but
I agree.
I don't know whether or not I achieved that, but that's certainly what I was trying to do.
I mean, that's what came across to me, and I like films like that are just kind of like, you gotta come up with yourself in terms of like where you stand with this. And I think that's a lot in life too, where we're observers, we're watching things happen, and what choice are you going to make in that? And I and we'll bring our own perceptions to it as well, our own history, and assume maybe something about a character or something that's going to happen in the film, and it's like, oh no, like at the I thought he was doing the right thing at the end, and I thought he was going to turn himself in and tell him that he was the one who hit the guy. and
I wanted
and
that too.
that's how I took it, and I was like, oh wow, okay, he learned something. And then you see him watching the police as they're clearing the park. And I appreciated that ending. I liked that it wasn't this kind of, it's not always that way. It's not always happy and messy. And that's something I think a lot of people can relate to, and especially right now in these times when we're going to see even more of a housing crisis across the globe. I mean, we're experiencing it in New York City, and your film is very timely.
Thank you. And thanks for saying that about the ending. I'm not sure that it would resonate with people, but it was certainly something that I enjoyed doing. And I was kind of inspired by, do you know the melodrama filmmaker Douglas Sirk from like the 1950s and 60s? He did these films with like Jane Wyman, Rock Hudson, and that sort of stuff. And he had these ironic happy endings where the studio would enforce him to make a sentimental, cheesy, happy ending. But he used to sort of go through the studio and present it as it's happy. But when you think about it for even a moment, you realize this is actually a really depressing ending. And that was kind of his way of like slipping that into these 1950s
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood films. I I had no pressures like that, obviously, this short film, but it was something that I really liked. I really liked that idea. And it's his happy ending, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. It is. That's, ultimately what he wanted, and his property value on their Airbnb will increase.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Man, it feels a little evil, but I liked guys
It's
like
honest.
Lars von Trier, where his films feel evil, and Haneke can too, where it feels as if the filmmaker or the film is being mean, not the characters, but like the film with this cold, objective point of view is kind of like nefarious or evil or something. I think Ari Aster did it with Hereditary and Midsummer. They kind of feel nasty, but they're not. But that's certainly the first kind of aesthetic that you get, and I think that can be kind of powerful.
Well, Alex, I have to say, it's very clear you are an incredibly thoughtful filmmaker, and have a wonderful talent in telling a story to the audience and just visually giving us these great perspectives. If we are to look up more of your work, where can we find you?
Oh, you can find me on Vimeo, Instagram, or Facebook. Just search Alex Laird. You'll definitely find me. That's very flattering of you, by the way. Thank you so much. I don't have a lot of feedback for my work, pretty minimal. So it's really cool to hear anybody say anything about it. And it's, very, very flattering. Thank you so much for including me in the festival. Yeah.
You are most welcome. And that's the fun part about the Talkbacks, is to do just this. So Alex, thank you. And again, this is a short film of Tabernacle. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina.
You're welcome.